Hey, good morning, FCF. We're starting a brand new series, and it's called Women of Faith of the Old Testament. Now, we could have listed a lot more, but we're sticking to our typical schedule where we're going to go, not 8 weeks, it'll be an 8-day journey, 2 weeks. Now, I'm going to tip you off about something. After this particular series, we're going to go to 6 days, which will be still 2 weeks, but Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we're going to bring back our question and answer live. So this just gives you a little bit of information before anybody else gets it. All right, we're going to start with the appropriate place, the very first woman ever. And she is the only woman that had the experience of being born by a man. When you really think that through. You remember the story in Genesis? The Lord puts Adam to sleep after he's named all the animals and there's no suitable partner found for him. He goes to sleep. The Lord takes a rib out of his side and from that constructs the first woman. Adam sees her, says, she's now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman. So here we have this woman who is essentially created directly by God, but kind of through her husband as well. She is born from her husband. Fascinating thing. Of course, it's a picture of how the church, the bride of Christ, will be born out of his pain, the removal of his heart, so to speak, when he's crucified for us on the cross. But that's getting too far in this thing. So let's see what we might learn quickly by looking at this very first woman. She is the only woman in history that from the earliest, from her instant awakening to life, was in the presence of God, saw God face to face, and also was born mature. Now, I want you to think about that. She was born a full-grown woman. She never had to go through those stages we go through where we can't eat and we can't, change ourselves and we can't walk, we can't talk. She was fully equipped and she sees God face to face from the start. She's also the first woman who was created married. She's brought into existence a married woman. And she's the only woman that's ever had a perfect relationship with any man. There's no reason to believe that her and Adam did not have an absolutely perfect relationship with one another, with their environment, with the animal kingdom, with God. It was just an existence that we all somewhere perhaps have a fading memory or hope of, but she experienced it. Now I'm going somewhere with this. She had it all, we might say, okay? Now, she was in a developmental journey, nevertheless. God was coming into the garden and educating her and Adam because he knew that knowledge was better taken in gradually. We tend to, if we get too much knowledge, we get proud, we get stupid, we do destructive things. So she's in this beautiful life. I mean, everything is paradisical. And we could try to stretch our imaginations to picture what it's like, but we probably never could picture the Garden of Eden itself. Nevertheless, she makes the mistake of encountering a being that we can't quite put together. The Hebrew sometimes called, he's called the Nakash, the shining one, the serpent. We don't really know what this entity looked like when it encountered Eve. We do know this. She seemed to be comfortable talking to this entity, and perhaps she had seen entities like this or other spiritual entities. But perhaps what I'm trying to say is perhaps Eve and Adam had access to higher dimensions, whereas now those God in protecting us has closed off to us. At any rate, she gets into the conversation with the wrong person, and what comes out is this, and this is where you and I can learn from Eve. We can learn a couple things, good things, but one of the negative things is this. Even if you and I have a perfect relationship with God, perfect relationship with others, perfect relationship with our environment, have everything we could possibly want, there is still the capacity to think that maybe it could be a little bit better. We have the capacity to become discontent with what God gives to us. We have the capacity to be discontent and suspicious with what God says is good for us and what we need and what we don't need. I mean, at the end of the day, the temptation was a simple one. Satan says that, God's holding back from you. That tree that he told you not to eat, that you would die. He says, you won't die. You'll become like God yourself. And so this horrible capacity for discontent, it happened before happening here on earth. The one that created the temptation for Adam and Eve, Satan, he evidently had experienced the same temptation himself in heaven in eons past, and he used that temptation to bring along 1/3 of the angels in a rebellion against God. So the thing we have to understand is that when God says something is enough, we've got to get it settled. You can't go any further. You can't get any better. There is no better. My will, when it starts to veer off from God's will, it's always veering off in a bad direction. Now, that is a really easy thing to say. It's a really easy thing to teach, and it's a really hard thing to live out in day-to-day life, particularly in a society that is flooding us with ideas, habits, value systems, and things that are so contrary to what God says is actually good for us. Now, Eve falls, Adam falls, and God comes in to rescue them. They feared his anger. He was not angry at them. He tries to restore them. He tries to get them feeling comfortable talking to himself again. He clothes them. They were running around with fig leaves tied on them. I can't even quite picture that. He kills animals, brings the death of animals and clothes them with animal skin. So here we have the principle that where evil exists, the death of innocence will always be the result. And it will call for the death of the innocent to finally break the power of sin. So we see all this happening back there. They get expelled from the garden, though, nevertheless, because they had to learn that you really can't have the kind of life that we're meant to have apart from God and His will and His ways. And she finally has a child. Now, the first child, she's still thinking about God. She did not give up on God, even though she's kicked out of the garden. And she says, I've received a man from the Lord, but the man turns out to be Cain. And you know the story. Cain kills his brother Abel, who comes later. But Eve still doesn't give up. When she finally has another son, his name is Seth, and she says again, God's kind of looking on her in favor. So Eve is a good picture of both our weaknesses and our capacity to be restored and redeemed. All evidence is that she lived a godly life for the rest of her times in a harsh, difficult world, and lived a very long life at that. And from all that we can tell, stayed faithful to God. There's no reason to believe that we won't see Eve in heaven. But we don't want to miss the first part of the lesson. We all have this terrible, terrible capacity for being discontent and thinking that we can do better. If we push beyond the boundaries of God's will, that we can do better. And that is just an impossibility. The first woman teaches us this lesson again and again and again. Thank you.